On October 20th, 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin encountered and recorded a large, hairy, bipedal creature walking away from them at Bluff Creek, 25 miles northwest of Orleans, California. This footage of an alleged Sasquatch sparked a continuing and intense debate about whether or not the footage was authentic or just an elaborate hoax for fame and fortune.
There have been reports of strange creatures in the area.
Witnesses say they couldn't believe what they were seeing.
What is that? Welcome, doubters, naysayers, non-believers, skeptics, and beloved fofers. Welcome to Paranormal Fable or Fact. I am Victor Trevino, joined by my co-host and beautiful wife, Tammy.
We are your humble guides to tales of alleged hoaxes, unbelievable stories, and the overall strange.
Okay, we're just talking about our email. Email is pfableorfact@proton.me. It is on the... It'll be on the episode.
It'll be on the episode. Yeah, the description of the episode. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Yeah.
My brain just goes whoosh,
Yeah.
blank right mid-sentence. I'm like talking, but I don't even know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway, I wanted to mention that when we're asking for ideas from the audience, it's not because we're running out of things to talk about, okay? Because we have just endless amounts of stuff we can talk about. Just incredible amounts of stuff. The reason we're asking is because we just want to see if we can't, if there's something specifically that people want to know about, then that's what I want to cover, because that's the kind of stuff. Otherwise, we'll just keep doing what interests me. I'm perfectly fine with that.
But we are fascinated with local folklores and urban legends,
Yeah.
and I personally like to do the research on stuff like that because it fascinates me.
Definitely. It's so interesting, like the different tales, even if they're not true, it's interesting.
Yes,
I just
it
find it
is.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And every story usually is based on some type of truth. I don't care how outlandish it is. You can usually trace it down to some kind of root, some kind of beginning where the story started.
Where it began.
And then as a reference to the other show, I kind of mentioned it during the show of the goblins, but I wanted to kind of reiterate it. It's possible that those goblins had nothing to do with what was in the sky, because if we're going to accept the idea that perhaps Billy Ray saw, when he saw that multicolored thing flying over the farmhouse, let's just say it was a meteor shower. Mm-hmm. That means the arrival of these things might not have anything to do with that.
Correct.
And just because you're saying, well, he saw a meteor shower, to me, doesn't disprove what happened to the family. And I just wanted to make that point. Because there's, like I said, there is like vast cave systems in that area that go so deep they've never been explored.
Oh, yeah. Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia. Yeah.
All they did, what the authorities did, is they closed off certain areas because they're so deep and so treacherous. They don't want people going down there because people die all the time.
Right.
So they'll close them off and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of coal mining and different kinds of mining down there. Yeah.
Basically, this show is called Patty's Walk, and it's about the PGF. That's what we're going to refer to it as, because it's going to take us too long to say Patterson Gimlin Film every time.
Every time.
Yeah, so we're just going to say the PGF. I don't think there's a person on this planet that hasn't at least seen it at least once. And if you've never seen the Patterson Gimlin Film, please watch it. And don't watch the original version because it's all shaky and it's garbage. You have to watch the newly stabilized version so you can actually see the creature as much as possible, because what is it? It's only like the creature's only in frame for like what, 6 seconds or something?
Yeah,
5 seconds,
not very many seconds. Yeah.
something like that. Mm-hmm. And then it passes through some trees, and then you can see it again for a little bit, and that's it. It's really short, and that's basically the gist. Is two cowboys go up to the mountains looking for Sasquatch. He had rented a really expensive camera. In fact, he didn't pay the he kept the rental camera longer than he was supposed to.
Oh.
And they issued a warrant for his arrest.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, he got the charges dropped, though, because Patterson did turn the camera back in.
Yeah.
And they dropped the charges. But that's how serious they were about this camera. So apparently the camera was, for the time, really expensive
Top
and
of the
high-tech.
line?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the film, well, we're going to get into the
Right.
red flags, because the film has something to do with some of the critics. And the good thing about this is I didn't find a lot of debunking. Well, what I feel are signs of debunking to me, the people that were mostly voicing their opinion on this case seem like legitimate skeptics, because some of the points they were bringing up are really, really good points.
Really good points.
My only thing is they're kind of weak points, so I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh, but to me it seemed like they're kind of nitpicking.
Okay.
Maybe when we go over them, then you form your own opinion. You
I
see
will.
if maybe I'm being a little too harsh. But to me, it just seems like nitpicking.
Okay.
For example, the first red flag that we're going to cover is the inconsistencies of how Patterson and Gimlin's, how the two horses reacted when they first saw the creature. Because basically they were both riding, and Patterson had his horse, and then he was carrying the pack horse behind him, roped to his horse.
Okay, yeah.
So he had two horses, and Gimlin only had one, because Gimlin was the rifleman. Patterson was supposed to be the cameraman.
Oh, okay.
Right? When he saw the creature, I believe Patterson described the horses as, because that's basically what happened, is when they saw the creature, Patterson went to get off the horse, and the horse kind of turned, because they were frightened because this thing was there.
Oh, okay.
And he kind of fell off the horse and kind of messed up his ankle a little bit. So then he's running across the rocks trying to film this thing, and that's why the beginning of the footage
that
is so
explains,
shaky.
yeah, the shaky
And he
part.
actually lost his footing and fell to his knees at one point, which is why I mean, if you see the original footage, it's garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like 5 seconds that's like, look at that, and then that's the rest of it's garbage.
Gotcha.
Because he fell off the horse is turned. Well, anyway, Patterson described the horses as running in the opposite direction of the creature, and Gimlin described them as kind of running towards him, because when they first saw the creature, he swept around kind of like to the left, away from Patterson, because he wanted to be able to cover him with the rifle while Patterson was filming. He didn't want Patterson to be in his line of fire, so he kind of
that
moved
makes
his
sense.
horse around. So he said the horses kind of came toward him, which is like, we're talking about maybe a 15 to 25 degree difference in the
Okay.
direction the horses ran. So
That's not very big
yeah,
of a deal.
like I said, it's kind of nitpicky,
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't you just say? I don't know. In fact, the defenders, and that's what I'm going to call them, because I believe it's Grover Krantz is the big proponent of the film. I believe. I should have wrote it down, but we're just going to call them the defenders, because there's him and several others that came in serious defense of this. It's a fierce debate, because there's a lot of proponents to say it's true, and there's a lot of people saying no, it's not. But there's just as many on both sides, and they've been locking horns for decades. The defenders actually say that because their stories right at the beginning, were inconsistent, that's evidence that they didn't get their story straight. You know what I mean? That they were hoaxing it. That they're not over there going, okay, this is what we're going to say.
Right.
So that their story perfectly aligns.
Oh, gotcha.
To me, that kind of makes a little sense, but I don't know. I don't know. But again, it's just kind of nitpicking. Just because they describe the horses going in a different direction, it means the whole thing's a hoax.
Yeah.
It kind of falls short. But the other thing that they criticized was the shutter speed at which Patterson taped the video. He claimed he didn't realize that it was set on 16 frames per second, which is like, I don't know, I'm not a photographer, so I don't want to get into the details of it or whatever, but they said he should have filmed at about 24 or maybe 30. And I guess the camera he had like a switch where you could click what shutter speed you wanted. And he just didn't realize, because everything else,
Well, he rented it. He probably didn't have experience with
well,
it.
the thing is everything else, because remember the original footage is like 3 minutes long, and there's like 2.5 minutes of them watering the horses, and he's filming the mountains and the trees,
okay.
and everything else was filmed at 24 frames per second, I believe.
Oh, okay.
But then there was another criticism of it, because when somebody looked at the frames one by one, because this is how in-depth people were looking at this thing, he counted 18 frames per second. So they located a specialist, because I believe it was a Kodak camera, and they located a specialist and asked him. He said that camera was quirky. When it says it's filming at 16 frames per second, it's actually filming at 18 frames per second. So no hoax, no faking. Patterson just filmed it at a slow frame rate. I guess if you film it at a higher frame rate, it would have had more detail to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's one of the inarguable truths that we're going to cover, because somebody did, and it's the only, in my opinion, the only evidence that I have of somebody trying to debunk it. It's just not a real good argument, but they just kind of threw it out there. And the other criticism, and this is where we start getting into the serious stuff here,
Okay.
because this is a serious accusation, and it's pretty hard to explain.
Okay.
At the time, the Kodak Chrome 2 movie film could only be developed by a lab that contained a machine that was like $60,000. So there wasn't a lot of, because remember they used to have the film development.
Oh, yeah. The little huts.
Yeah, they were usually in like bigger stores like Walmart or Kmart or Target and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or they had their own little kiosks or whatever.
The little huts that you
Yeah, the
used to
little
drive
huts.
up to.
Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of areas in the country that they could have gotten the film developed. And apparently, I guess it would have taken longer than he claimed when he got the film back and released it to, said, hey, look, I have it. They're saying it would have taken him a longer time for them to develop the film, right? Mm-hmm. Because I guess it takes a certain amount of time. So when he said, well, I didn't get it developed, my brother-in-law did. So they questioned the brother-in-law, whose name is Al. I don't even know if he's alive still. He might still be. I don't know. His name was Al Diatley. He claimed that he didn't remember where he took the film and where he got it developed. So that, to me, is a red flag, because that shows kind of like a chink in the armor,
Yeah.
Because it could be used as evidence that perhaps they were, hoaxing it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to say about that, because again, I don't know a lot about film.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know. I didn't bother to look up the schematics of this old camera from the 60s,
Right.
And even then, the guy, the specialist that they contacted over this camera said that it was quirky. Remember, he's the one that said, the Kodak specialist said that even though you have it at 16 frames per second, it's actually filming at 18. So who knows what else is screwed up? Maybe the film, even though it was hard to get it developed because there wasn't a lot of places, maybe it was really quick to develop it.
Yeah.
I mean, the machine cost $60,000. The timeline, you know what I mean? We're talking about just a matter of like maybe a day. So who knows?
That fast?
Yeah, because most of the places, the argument was most of the places didn't develop the film over the weekend.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't know how he got the film developed. But I mean, if you had somebody on special order, or you had an inside, what's it called? Inside
guy.
Yeah, an inside job, and you had a special order going on, then you could have had somebody develop it over the weekend, particularly if you're talking about something to this degree, you know what I mean?
Or the place where you rented the camera.
Or maybe the place you rented the camera at. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
The point is that it is a good argument.
Right.
And that's why I don't want to bash it. But again, it's kind of nitpicky, don't you think? How long does it take you to develop
I could see
the film?
both ways.
The thing is even if, I guess, no, it is a good point, because it would show that he had the film prior to the time where he claimed he filmed it.
Yes.
And that's why it's a really big point.
Right.
But again, there's so many variables. I don't know if that's enough to push anybody over the edge to go, oh, yeah, that's it. Let's just pack up our stuff, folks. It's a hoax. I just...
Yeah.
The other red flag, and this is a big one in the for authenticity column. Patterson had a buddy that worked in Willow Creek, which is in the area where they had filmed this. They came down the hill, left all their gear up there. Came down because they're on horseback. This is rugged, remote terrain,
that's
baby.
true.
So they came down on their horses, went to this store. He tells the guy, call Donald Abbott. Because I guess Donald Abbott at the time, and again, I don't know if Donald Abbott's still alive.
Right.
But he was a scientist he had some interest in Sasquatch.
Okay.
So, and what Patterson had hoped is that Abbott would join him on the mountain and try to find this thing, and bring a tracking dog or two to try to find this thing. His buddy Hodgkins, the store owner, called Abbott, but Abbott declined. But the defenders say, hey, there's records of this call going through on the day that they filmed it, which was October 20th, 1967. The fact that they made the call on that day, and this guy had nothing to do with it. I mean, he's a friend, but still.
Yeah.
He called from the store to this scientist.
After the sighting.
After the sighting. So it just made the timeline that they're challenging matches up.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would have had to drive way out in the middle of nowhere and, have this guy make this call or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, here's another thing.
And this is before cell phones. So
Yeah.
You can make a phone call right there.
It was either a payphone or you had to go to a landline. Yeah. The term landline didn't even exist.
No.
Because that's all there was.
Yeah.
So it was just a phone. Do you have a phone? That was it.
Yeah, exactly.
The next red flag I want to talk about is this U.S. Forestry Service guy. He and two others were in a Jeep, and they were driving through the area. And because they heard that these guys were going out there or whatever, so I guess they were in the area making sure they weren't, like, trying to fish or poach or whatever,
right, yeah.
what rangers are supposed to do. Right.
Yeah.
So they kind of drove through the area where these guys said they were going to go, kind of looked around. They didn't notice any tracks. He said that happened either on Thursday the 19th or Friday the 20th.
Okay.
Because remember, the 20th is when they filmed it.
Right.
They didn't notice any tracks. And these are rangers, these guys, that's all these guys do. They notice tracks,
Yeah, because they're there to protect the animals.
After reading the newspaper on their weekend break, because I guess the news broke that evening or maybe Saturday morning.
Okay.
After hearing the news, him and his buddies, this guy's name is Lyle Laverty, and he worked for the U.S. Forestry Service. They jumped in their Jeeps, their own cars again, on their own time off. This is their own personal time. And they drove back out there where these two men claimed where they filmed this thing, and they saw the tracks. Not only did they see the tracks, they took 6 photos of the tracks. And I wish those 6 photos were available, because that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, the reason...
Why aren't they available?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was...
It's the guys in the black suits.
Well, it's over 50 years ago.
I'm just saying, it's the guys in the black suits.
But you're talking about over 50 years.
Yeah.
It's almost 60 years now.
Yeah.
That this is... Most of the people involved are dead.
Yeah.
Bob Gimlin is still kicking, but he's in his 80s already, so... I think he's pushing 90 now.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, it would be fascinating to see the photos, because the only reason they left after tracking because they actually tracked the creature for like over a mile, and it went through really heavy brush, so they had to turn back because it was starting to get dark. Mm-hmm. So the only reason they left is because it started to rain really heavily.
Oh, okay.
And they were afraid that their way out would be washed out. If the river got too high, they wouldn't be able to get out.
Right.
So, because remember, they're on horseback.
Yeah.
So that's why they left.
Wait, I thought they were on a Jeep.
No, the Rangers were on the Jeep.
Oh, you're talking
Bob
about... Okay,
and
you're talking...
Yeah, the reason Patterson and Gimlin left is because it was started to rain really hard, and they were trying to conserve the tracks, I guess for additional photos or something. I don't know. Or maybe I think they wanted to... Because they did take plaster casts of other tracks. I don't think they got plaster casts of those. I can't remember. Because there was 2 reels of film. The first reel was of the creature. That's the one everybody knows about. And then the second reel was them filming the tracks and filling the tracks up with plaster. And that's going to be we're going to cover that more in as we talk about it in the conclusions, I think.
Okay.
But the next red flag is when the story broke. Again, there was just almost no interest from the scientific community. Of course, it was just a big ho-hum, big yawn, nothing to see here. Nobody even wanted to watch it.
Oh, wow.
Now, again, this is why it makes me very suspicious, because science is driven by curiosity.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. It's the very fuel that drives science is curiosity. Once you find something you can't explain, you go all in, right?
Yeah.
That's when they launch
Yeah.
all of
All
these
the-
efforts and tests and start doing
they're
all their
always trying to look
experiments.
they're always trying to look for new
They're
animals,
looking for the
and new
answers.
creatures, and
They're always
Yeah.
looking for answers. So the fact that this came out with a possible unknown creature and all of them were just like, yawn, nothing to see it. To me, I think this creature has been flagged by some upper power either in the government or maybe even in academia, I don't know, where they don't want to talk about it. And I don't want to go too far into that because if we start talking about whether Sasquatch exists or not, that's like a whole different show.
Right.
We're trying to focus on the PGF.
right.
So, but it's stunning to me that
Nobody wanted to watch it.
exactly. Because think about it, baby. If this was, let's say, a flightless bird that people said was 7 to 8 feet tall
Yeah, like a dodo bird.
and running around in the woods, and people kept seeing it, and people were getting plaster casts of its tracks, and people were finding feathers,
Yeah,
and
they-
people were finding nests,
Yeah.
and people were hitting them with cars, and all this kind of stuff, do you think science would go, oh, nothing to see here?
Oh, no, they'd be on
They'd
it.
be all over it. But the fact that it's a hominid, the fact that it might not match up with the evolutionary charts that they love to waver on in people's
I see where you're
faces.
going. I see
You
where
see what
you're
I'm saying?
going. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, oh no, we don't want to look at that. No, no interest. No, that's a hoax. That's fake. Then everybody look away. Nothing to see over there. Don't look. Don't pay attention to the little man behind the curtain. It's just highly suspicious to me. I don't have any proof. This is all
Right.
speculation,
Yeah,
of course.
speculation.
But it's highly suspicious because, again, if it was any other creature, the scientists would be all over it. Mm-hmm. All over it. I
Yeah.
mean, when you look at the panda, you look at the coelacanth, all these other creatures the giant squid, all these other creatures that people have been saying exist for a very long time. Science went ho-hum at first, but then as more people started seeing them and they started finding evidence and tracks and feces and all this other stuff, then science started launching and they discovered these creatures.
Yeah.
So why aren't they
Exhibitions and
doing
stuff,
it
yeah.
with the Sasquatch? I don't understand. I don't want to get too into the discussion of whether or not this is a real creature. Now we're just going to focus on the authenticity of the actual film. Another thing, years later, Patterson and Gimlin both agreed that they wished they would have shot the creature and killed it and brought the carcass back for prosperity. Because that would have silenced the naysayers
Right.
and it would have gotten them way more financial gain because you can't deny a body.
Right.
And I know a lot of people are horrified to hear that. You're going to shoot one of nature's creatures, you animal. But how do you think scientists collect? Don't tell me you haven't seen those insects on the pins in their offices.
And your junior high.
That's how scientists collect stuff. They have to kill it. It's how they study it.
Yeah.
And not necessarily have to kill it, and they don't want to collect a dead specimen
Right.
that might be ill or wounded or crippled or whatever. They want a healthy specimen,
specimen.
so they have to kill them.
Right.
It's just the way science works. Don't get mad at the people that are trying to get the proof. Get mad at the scientists because that's what they demand. That is the standard. Have to have a body, have to be able to dissect it, have to be able to study the bone structures, the muscular structures, you look at the reproductive organs,
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So that's on science. It stuns me that so many people lash out against the Sasquatch researchers saying, you're trying to shoot at you're horrible. They have to. It's not their fault. But anyway, I keep riding the rail.
Yes,
I'm trying to
yes,
go
stop
into
doing that.
But
Stop
it's just
doing
a
that.
completely different show.
Yes.
So we have plenty to talk about on this PGF.
Yes.
So you did more in-depth research on Patterson through your genealogy, right?
Yes.
Okay, what do you have?
So Mr. Patterson, his interest in Bigfoot started in 1958. He interviewed a lot of people in Washington, Oregon, California, in the West Coast. A lot of American Indians. Was trying to get a lot of interviews by folklore and all that stuff. So he was very interested.
Wow.
Mr. Patterson was an Army vet. He served in the Korean War.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he served in the Korean War. His dad was also a vet who served in World War II. So he came from a long line of military.
Served his country nobly.
Yes, he was one of 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. He was the 5th, and he left behind a wife and 2 kids.
And he wrote a book.
And he wrote a book. Now, there's different stories of what the title was. One said, "Do a bomb, a bond." Say that word for me, please. Yay, karma.
Why can't I say it?
I don't know.
Abominable.
Yes,
Abominable.
Snowman of American Really Exist is one title. Or it's just called, say that word again?
Abominable.
Yeah, Snowman
I can't
of
believe
America.
either one of us could say it.
I know.
Wow.
Well, you know, I have a hard time saying words like that. So he wrote a book, and it's been rewritten and added. They've added the
PGF?
Yeah, they added information from the PGF. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because you don't know it's
in the
PGF.
new one. Well, I want to make sure I'm using the right initials.
Patterson Gimlin Film.
I know. I always want to do PGB or PGP or something. So and he died very young.
Yeah, 39
Really
years
young.
old. Died of
Yeah.
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
Didn't you say you said something about stomach cancer? or
Yeah,
something?
one. See, that's the thing about looking some people up and stuff. Unless you see a death certificate or something, it doesn't. You know what I mean? You don't
Yeah,
know
'cause
the
you could-
exact. Yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't find
I
his
didn't
death
find
certificate.
a death certificate. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, some states don't have the death certificates online, and I believe he died in Washington, and I don't think.
Why?
I think they just haven't archived them. I think some are slow to the game.
So they're lazy?
Okay.
Lazy Washingtonians?
Well, either that or I just couldn't find it. So don't blame the whole
If
state.
you're from Washington,
Yeah.
please don't stop
Yeah,
listening.
don't blame the whole state. That was not me, y'all. Okay.
I was just kidding anyway.
All right. So that's a little bit about Mr. Patterson.
And it's because remember, he was painted as a con man.
Right.
Because in the time, and another thing I wanted to mention before I forget, during the time he had a lot of debts because he had made several films or attempted to make several films before filming the Patterson Gimlin film, which is why people said that it was a hoax because he had already practiced filming Sasquatch in the wild. That's how Bob Geronimus, the guy that came out and claimed that I'm the one that wore the suit, that's why that costume company, and I don't know the name of the costume company, but they're the ones that came out. Remember back in like the late 90s or something?
Yeah.
And then they said that we made the suit, so, and everybody was like, oh, that's it. See, it's fake. We got 2 people coming forward and saying that this guy wore the suit, this person made the suit. That's it. Hands down, everybody go away. It's a hoax. Not so.
Yeah.
Not so. It was a film that Patterson had attempted beforehand, and the reason he didn't go forward with the film is because it was so clear that it was a suit
Yeah.
that Geronimus was wearing.
Well, and they said they also said Mr. Geronimus walks like that, still walks like that because if you see videos, but let's be honest, people, you could just start walking like that. Interestingly,
The thing is, and this is another point before we get into the inarguable truths, because I didn't put this in inarguable truths, even though I should have. The way, if you watch the stabilized version, and this is one of the reasons that I became a believer. I believe that they're just gonna put it out there.
Did you believe at the beginning when you first saw it?
No.
Okay.
No, I thought
interesting.
it was a hoax. What led me to believe was not only seeing Bob Gimlin's character, and his character's in the inarguable truth, so I don't want to go too far into that. Seeing Bob Gimlin's character, he seems like a stand-up dude. That was the one thing. The second thing is how the creature walks. If you watch the stabilized version at the very beginning as it's walking, not only can you see the bottom of its feet, which argues very strongly against it being a costume, because most costumes would have fake-looking feet. These feet do not look fake. It looks like a pad. It looks like a padded foot is what it looks like to me.
An animal.
Like with grayish skin.
Yeah.
But that's not the astounding thing. The astounding thing is it's lifting its legs up to where its feet are perpendicular to the ground.
Oh.
People don't walk like that. It's akin to bringing your heels up to kick yourself in the butt while you walk.
Oh, yeah.
But not all the way.
Yeah, we don't.
So if you walk like that and bring your feet up to where they're perpendicular to the ground, which each step, it's very ungainly.
Yeah.
It's not a real good way to walk
Right.
for people. But this is how this thing was walking. And if you watch the film, it's not slowing down. It does not seem to be affected by walking like that, but that's how it's walking, at least at the beginning. And then as it starts going downhill, it seems to lower its legs a little bit, because maybe to bring them forward quicker, because it's moving kind of like, because it's kind of like it's in uneven ground, so it might not. Just at the very beginning, you can clearly see the feet, and it's just not a natural way for a human to walk.
Okay.
I don't see why you would do that
Okay.
to try to make it authentic, or even think to do that to make it authentic. The other thing is, when you look at the tracks, because I only saw the second reel once. I know it was aired several times. I should have looked for it to see if I could find a link so that people could go and watch it, but I don't think because the second reel, both movies vanished, by the way. They don't know where they are.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, like we talked about before, anytime there's anything kind of authentic moving towards the paranormal, stuff happens to just vanish. But it's also because Roger Patterson died at 39.
Yeah.
He only had the film for 5 years, and then he died.
Yeah.
Which is really sad when you think about it.
I know.
But anyway, the other thing, when you watch that film and you look at the picture, because you can see the photograph, and you look at the way the creature's walking, its steps are almost directly in front of one another, akin to a person trying to walk like they're on a tightrope.
Okay.
So if you walk, trust me, I tried. If you walk where you're almost bringing your heels up to your butt so that your feet are perpendicular to the ground, and then try to walk
Straight.
almost like you're walking a tightrope,
Yeah.
it is very, very difficult. Not only is it difficult to do, but to move at the speed Patty is moving and swinging the arms, looking just like it's just gliding
Who's
across.
Patty?
Patty's the creature. You didn't know?
No, I had no idea that the creature had a name. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
Yes, the creature's nicknamed Patty
Okay.
because it had breasts.
Oh,
It's a female.
Okay. I didn't know that either.
They estimate that she, on the film, because of they used a guy that was 6'5", and they put Patty superimposed on this guy walking the trail. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's like 6'5" in his boots.
Okay.
Patty was either the same height or a little taller, so they estimate she was right around 6.5 to 6'6", right around there.
Actually, Patty's height is estimated to be between 6.5 to 7 feet tall.
Yeah, and don't they say the females are about that? Like they're shorter than the males?
So, yeah. And it's much bigger, because even in humans, the 1%, there's only like less than 1% of women that are over 6 foot.
Right.
And that height averages about 6 foot in that little percentage. The same cutoff for men at that same percentage, men average 6'4". So even in humans, there's that size difference between men and women. I think it's safe to say that in Sasquatch, when people talk about these males being these huge muscular things that are like 7, 8 feet tall, if the female's 6.5 feet tall, maybe the male could be 7.5 feet tall. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know about the whole 10 and 11 foot thing. That's just a monster. People don't realize how big that is. That's just monstrous.
Yeah.
But if you do see something that big, you would be so afraid. You wouldn't even know what to do. But anyway, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got completely sidetracked.
Yeah.
That's what made me start to believe in the authenticity of this thing.
It's
And
because
also,
of the foot pads.
the way it walked.
Okay.
It just can't be. And they talk about the hip swivel. That's what they're talking about, because the way the feet hit the ground, humans don't walk that way. Our
Right.
hips don't move that way when we walk.
Yeah.
We kind of do like the little, if you've seen those exercise machines, like the
Yes.
cross country,
Yes.
where the little skis are moving back, forth and backwards like that. That's how
That's
people
how we
walk.
walk,
We only lift our feet like a half inch to an inch above the ground when
Right.
we walk,
Right.
a normal pace. It's why we trip so easily.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we lift our feet up is when we're jogging. Well, clearly, Patty in the film is not jogging. She's just walking. And the arms and the knees, the other thing was the arms where the elbows were and where the knees were did not match up to Geronimus when they superimposed him over this creature. Because Geronimus was like 6'6", I believe. So he was the same size, height-wise. Patty was still a little bulkier, but they could just say that was the suit. But the elbows and the knees didn't match up. You can fake extra long arms, but you cannot fake where those elbows bend.
Yeah, joints. You can't
You
fake
can't
joints.
fake where your knees bend.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that led me to believe that perhaps it was a real thing. Plus,
Interesting.
I had my own sighting of something that I thought for years was just a big guy in a fur coat, but after thinking about it over the years, and listening to Sasquatch Chronicle, it started making sense that I don't know what I saw.
Yeah.
Don't know if I saw a Sasquatch, but I don't know what I saw.
Yeah.
And we'll just leave it at that, because that's like a whole nother show on itself. I think we're ready
To
to
go
move on
to the ITs.
to the inarguable truths.
Inarguable truth number 1.
Chimpanzees do not live in cold climates.
Inarguable truth number 2.
Bob Gimlin stayed out of the limelight.
Inarguable truth number 3.
Roger Patterson insisted that the film was authentic before he died.
Inarguable truth number 4.
Shutter speed does not change the way a subject walks on film.
Inarguable truth number 5.
Pareidolia is the tendency for perception to impose a meaningful or known interpretation on a visual stimulus so that one detects an object, pattern, or meaning where there is none.
Inarguable truth number 6.
The PGF has never been duplicated.
Okay, so let's talk about the first one. This was kind of like the only, these two, the inarguable truth number 1 and number 3, inarguable number 1 and number 4 were the two that were kind of borderline on debunkers.
Okay.
The way they criticized the film. Because one of the criticisms is that neither chimpanzees nor human females have hair on their breasts. So when you see Patty with these hairy breasts, that proves it's a costume. That's nonsensical, because there are plenty of, you can go online right now and look, there are plenty of chimpanzees with hair on their breasts. Number 1. Number 2, chimpanzees do not live in cold climates. So even if they are bare-chested when they're breastfeeding or whatever, they're in a hot climate. If they lived up in the mountains where it was freezing cold, like the Sasquatch does, maybe they'd have a little more hair on their chest.
Right. Well, that's like animals that like shed, like, you know, bears get their furs thicker
Thick,
during
right.
winter
You
time.
get that winter coat.
Right, that winter coat. Yeah, exactly, winter
Yeah.
coat. And then same with dogs and stuff. So
and
yeah.
if one would try to argue that, well, you know, because chimpanzees are just, that's not just enough evidence, you can look at other monkeys that live in cold climates, for example, snow monkeys, which are like, I think they're macaques, I believe. I think they're called macaques. But anyway, they're these snow monkeys that live in Japan, and they live in really, really cold temperatures. The females have full fur or hair on their chest. They're completely covered, even when they're breastfeeding, because it's a cold climate, and they will have to be protected against cold. You've seen those monkeys. They're the ones that go in the volcanic hot springs and sometimes go out to warm up. Yeah. So anyway,
now I know which ones you're talking about.
That's basically my argument to that. I don't want to say a debunking argument, but it's kind of close to dismiss the film because the subject had furry breasts and say that chimpanzees and humans don't, so that means it's fake. That it's such a weak argument. Isn't that a weak argument to you?
Yeah.
Especially when Chimpanzees do have
Well, it's just like you said.
nitpicking.
Yeah, I could say it's nitpicking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do.
So I don't want to say it's debunking, but it's nitpicking is what it is.
Yeah.
I think we've covered that enough.
Yeah.
Let's move on with inarguable truth number 2, which is Bob Gimlin stayed out of the limelight. And this is what I was talking about, to go back to Bob Gimlin.
Mr. Gimlin.
Mr. Gimlin, his character, he has an impeccable character. This guy is like a man's man. This guy is like old school cowboy.
Okay.
Really easygoing dude. If you've ever heard him in any kind of interviews, you'd fall in love with him. Because you fell in love with Tom Moore from Mountain Man.
Oh, yeah.
Thought he was like the sweetest guy.
Loved him.
To me, that's how Bob Gimlin comes across.
Oh, reminds you of Tom Moore?
Of Tom Moore. Just that
Okay.
real laid back, old OG kind of cowboy,
Yeah.
countryman,
Slow talking.
Because Bob Gimlin was also a rodeo. He also rode in the rodeos.
Is that how they knew each
He's
other?
a cowboy. Yeah, they were cowboys. These were
Okay.
2 cowboys.
Okay.
So, I think Bob served in the military too. I don't know. I don't know a lot about him, but maybe I should have looked it up. But
You didn't tell me to look him up.
yeah, I didn't. Well, because I was more interested in Patterson.
Right,
He's not here to defend himself.
Right, exactly.
He
And
died,
that's who we're defending.
And well,
or we're helping.
let's not go into
not
that
defending.
too much.
Yeah, not defending.
Because that's inarguable truth number
Right.
3. So let's not go into it too much. But anyway, Bob Gimlin only gave 3 interviews from the time the film came out in 1967 all the way up until 2005.
It was actually in 2003.
Wow, that's a long time.
Which is almost 40 years.
Yeah.
And 40 years' time, or is that almost 50 years?
I don't know. I can't count right now.
No, that's almost 40 years.
Okay.
In almost 40 years' time, he only gave 3 interviews. His wife didn't want the publicity. He didn't want the publicity. He just stayed out of the limelight. I believe the reason he came forward in 2005, before everybody says, oh, well, he's just trying to make a buck. I believe the reason he came forward is because it was right around that time that people realized both films, the originals, were gone. Because this is when the technology was coming out. We have 4K and I believe up to 8K scanners now. If they could have taken a computer with 8K technology resolution and scanned those original films, can you imagine what the kind of detail we'd have now? Even because the computer's smart, it's going to pick up tiny little. We can't see little each.
AI the heck out of it.
Well, it's because each digital pixel has its own information. So the computer would be able to plot out exactly what it was representing, even though the human eye we can't see it.
Right.
So it would be able to, it would have been fascinating. And I believe that's why the film went missing, because we don't want it being scanned at high def.
Gotcha.
Because then it would be almost irrefutable to say that it was a...
May I ask a question?
You can, baby.
Did Mr. Gimlin and Mr. Patterson did they stay friends after the encounter all the way to Mr. Patterson's death?
Yes.
Okay.
Although Mr. Gimlin was one of the ones that was angry with Roger Patterson because apparently he funded the entire trip. It was his trailer, his truck, his gas money, his camping gear, and apparently Patterson was supposed to give him money back and never did. He actually had to sue
Oh, he did sue
his
Mr.
wife.
Patterson?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the wife after Patterson passed away because
really?
he never got paid back for that trip and he never got any proceeds from the movie.
Mr. Patterson got money for the movie?
Oh, yeah. He sold it to the BBC. They made all kinds of documentaries on it, all kinds of stuff. He probably didn't make a lot because he didn't die a millionaire. I know that. But he made money and he should have split it with his...
all the stuff I saw that he spent all his money.
He should have spent it on his partner, though. Bob Gimlin was there. He was, half the team, and it was all his gear that made that trip possible.
So Mr. Gimlin did have ill feelings towards him then?
I don't know about ill, but he just wanted his money back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this film was all over the world. It's one of the most famous films on the planet. Yeah. And he saw nothing.
Yeah.
So I understand why he would want his cut,
Right. But see, that could be an issue too.
What?
Because the money, they're not friends anymore. You know what I mean? It could have been that could have been.
Yay or nay, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Basically, what you're asking is, did Bob Gimlin ever turn on Roger Patterson as far as the authenticity of the film?
Right.
No.
Right. Okay.
The answer is absolutely not. Bob
Okay.
Gimlin has always
Said it was
defended
authentic.
not only himself, but Roger Patterson,
Okay.
that it was a real thing. They had no idea. The reason the film was so crappy is because they were both caught with their pants down.
Yeah.
The frame, frames
Well, they're
per second.
cowboys. They're not
They're not
photographers.
Well, Roger had experience, though. That's why he was criticized.
Yeah, but he also fell, and
Yeah.
and it happened so fast. And come on.
This is one of the reasons why I believe that it was authentic, though, because of Bob Gimlin's character. He wasn't trying to get attention. He wasn't trying to get money until years later. Because I think he sued the family like in the 90s or something, almost 30 years after. And this is when the film, because you know how famous the
So
film
the
is.
Patterson family was getting money still in the 90s after.
Well, they owned the film.
Oh, okay,
Roger,
I got you.
Roger Patterson, and I believe he split the ownership with his brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
The Atlee.
Okay.
And that's when the film just, because
Blew up.
I guess they sold it to somebody or they sold it to a company and that company went bankrupt. And the company that took over had the film and they went bankrupt. So that the defenders of the film rushed down to this company, this corporation, to look for the film and they couldn't find it. So they have no idea where the film went.
Oh, wow.
Just magical how it just vanished.
Yeah, magical.
So they suspect somebody's hanging on to it
Right.
that doesn't want it
Out.
or hanging on to it because they want to wait until they can cash in with a big,
Yeah.
finder's
yeah.
fee
It's
or
all about the
whatever.
money.
Yeah. So let's move on to inarguable truth number 3. Roger Patterson insisted that the film was authentic before he died. Again, big point. Chance for deathbed confession, but
Right.
no. He insisted, even though he probably was dying a very painful death and was probably ill for several months,
Yeah.
suffering, wanted to make peace with his maker, had a chance to make peace with his maker. If he was lying, it's a perfect opportunity to come forward and say, all right, you got me.
Yeah.
I faked it. I hoaxed it. He did not. He stayed all the way, and he died at the young age of 39. That is incredible
Yeah.
that he didn't even make 40.
I know. That's sad.
So regardless of what you feel about Roger Patterson, just, if you do follow the belief that he was a con man and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not going to argue against it because, like I said, there is evidence that he did owe people money and that he did make
Right.
promises he didn't keep, but
Right.
the man was a Korean
But you're not
War.
his judge.
Yeah, right, but he was a Korean War vet. I mean,
Yes.
he served his country.
Yeah.
He was the father of 2.
Yeah.
He was a husband.
Yeah.
He's still a person.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't like talking ill of the dead. So.
Yes.
And I think it's pretty much
Yeah,
all we have to
that's
say
it.
on that
Yeah,
point.
that's it.
So let's move on to inarguable truth number 4, which is shutter speed does not change the way a subject walks on film. To me, it kind of borderlined on debunking because apparently some scientist that was interested in photography or whatever, he was one of the ones criticizing the frame speed, the frames per second. Because he said that when you look at had he filmed it at the correct speed, the whole walking with the hips and the
Yeah,
feet and all
yeah.
that would have looked normal.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. It's.
In
yeah.
fact, the defender, I don't even have to say anything because the defenders came forward and said if you look at the footage prior to the film, and it's all over the place online, you can
Yeah.
find it anywhere. Type in PGF, it'll pop up, Patterson Gimlin Film, it'll pop up, and you can watch it yourself. The defenders pointed out that prior to the footage of them filming the creature, everything's all jittery and jumpy when he was filming at 24 frames per second.
Well, they said the camera was quirky. And what year was this, Victor?
1967.
Yeah. Cameras, film cameras, were probably not. They're in they're not like portable because this is a portable one, right?
Well, yes.
Okay.
It was
So it's in
definitely in
it. It's
infancy.
infancy, okay, yeah.
Well, but that's not the point. The point is that they're saying had he filmed it at a faster speed, like they're criticizing him, he should have, it would have been all jumpy like the previous footage to the actual film.
Oh, okay, I got you.
You see what I mean?
got you.
Because
Yeah,
it's all jumpy and jittery.
I'm going way left field. I see what you're saying.
So they're saying it's
Thanks
good.
for bringing me back.
They're saying it's good that he filmed it at 16 frames or 18 frames per second because the film's quirky.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't look so jumpy.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
like the
gotcha.
previous footage before that.
Gotcha.
So But the idea that if he filmed it at a faster frame rate, that would have somehow fixed the foot coming up perpendicular to the ground and the way it was walking almost in a straight line, like that's asinine.
Yeah.
That is an idiotic argument. Borderline debunking right there, because that's like, my mind's already made up. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's already made up.
Right.
Had he done it right,
Yeah.
then we wouldn't be even talking about that.
Had he been perfect.
Yes, and that does not take away from the fact that what you see on camera can't be explained.
Yeah,
We don't know what we're looking at.
exactly.
I think we covered that one enough. 'Cause
Yeah,
I don't
we're
wanna
good.
Beat it over the head, because the two final points are the big ones.
Okay.
Inarguable truth number 5. Pareidolia is the tendency for perception to impose a meaningful or known interpretation on a visual stimulus, so that one detects an object, pattern, or meaning where there is none.
Oh, okay, I know what that
Pareidolia-
is now.
Yes, pareidolia. Well, the perfect way to describe it is when you look at like a wood grain and you
Yes.
see a face.
I was just going to say that.
Or
I
you
was
look
just
down
gonna
at
say that.
some tile with
Yeah,
patterns on
yeah,
it, and
yeah.
you see, let's say, a witch.
Or you see,
or a dog.
you see Mother Teresa in a toast.
Yes, or you look up in the sky in the clouds and you see an
Clouds.
elephant.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
or a bird or whatever, a dragon.
Pareidolia.
That's called pareidolia. What it is your brain is seeing an unfamiliar pattern, and it tries to sort it to where it makes sense to you.
Ah, gotcha.
Now, remember that basic definition.
Okay.
Your mind is seeing something you don't recognize,
Okay.
and your brain is trying to sort it, even though it's not there. So it's not actually a dragon
I
you're
got
looking
you, I
at
got you.
in the clouds, but your
Yeah.
brain is telling you that it
it's
is.
a dragon.
Skeptics and debunkers love to use pareidolia against witnesses because they're saying you don't know what you saw. Mm-hmm. Pareidolia kicked in, and your brain told you that it was this, and that means you didn't see what you made a misidentification. I am taking a stance on this because that's not the definition of pareidolia. Pareidolia actually works in favor of the witnesses. Because if you see, let's just say hypothetically, you and I are driving along, right?
Yeah.
At night.
Yeah.
We see this massive creature that looks like a wolf
Yeah.
cross the road in front of us.
Right.
Obviously canine,
Yeah.
obviously a wolf, but it's so huge that it just does not make sense to us. So both of us
Right.
are stunned. Did you just see that? And you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, what is it? You're screaming. We're both screaming.
Yeah.
We're both panicking.
Yeah.
We don't know what it was. It's so big, it looked like it could have, like, if we would have hit it, it would have killed us both. you know,
Right.
that big. Pareidolia would have kicked in, and we would have saw a bear.
Oh,
Because we saw something
gotcha.
that isn't familiar.
Right. So
Because you
would-
can't see a wolf that
Right.
big.
So your brain is trying to tell you, no, it's
So
a
your
bear.
brain would kick in and tell you it was a bear, not the other way around.
Ah, gotcha.
You're not going to see a bear that's familiar, and your brain go, was that a big giant wolf? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I believe it works opposite the way the skeptics try to use it. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually in favor of the witnesses. Now, the reason I wanted to make this point, and the reason I wanted to make it an arguable truth, because it is an arguable,
Okay.
that's the definition. You see something that is either known or familiar, like a cloud or a fence
Yeah.
or a floor tile,
Right.
but because of the pattern, it shows you something that's there that's not there.
Right.
If you see a bear running across the road, you're not going to say, did you see that Sasquatch?
Right.
Because Sasquatch don't make any sense to you. You've never
Yes.
seen a Sasquatch.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's a very good argument. I think it's a good point. I think it's an argument.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's why I wanted to talk about pareidolia. I don't want to go into the whole details because I know there's nuances and
Yeah.
the different. Yeah.
No, that's too deep.
Somebody probably could make an argument, so maybe I shouldn't have put it in the inarguable truths because I know there's probably. I know the stimuli aren't limited to just visual. There's also audio and different
Yeah.
stimuluses that you can see that might not be
Yeah,
what
but
you
we
think.
don't need to go that deep.
But the vast majority of pareidolia is limited to vision,
Okay.
and that's why the skeptics like to use it.
Okay.
The main reason I wanted to make this an inarguable truth is if you haven't seen the film, or even if you have seen it already, I invite you to go back, watch the stabilized version, and just keep it in the back of your brain that as you watch that, your mind is telling you. You're looking at something that's not familiar to you, so your brain is going to be firing at you rapidly.
Yeah.
It's a man in a suit, 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 man in a suit. Because it has to be. What else could it be? What else could it be, baby? We don't know what a Sasquatch looks like.
Right.
So your brain is going to try to make sense of it, and it's going to tell you it's a man in a suit.
Right.
It has to be.
To make sense.
To make sense.
Okay.
That's how pareidolia works.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. If you're one of these people that has seen it and got, it's just a guy in a suit, just keep that fact in the back of your mind that your pareidolia might be kicking off. And your brain is telling you guy in a suit, guy in a suit, guy in a suit, because that's the only thing that makes sense.
Right.
And that's the whole reason I wanted to make this point.
Okay.
Food for thought. Throw it out there.
Yeah.
You make up your own mind.
Get your pareidolia checked.
What did you call it?
I don't know. Pareidolia. How do you say it? How do you say it?
I don't even know what you said.
I don't know.
Pareidolia. Or it's, pareidolia. I don't know what you said. Anyway, and then you mispronounce stuff, and it makes me mispronounce stuff. So
Well, stop copying me.
let's go. We're at the finish line, baby.
Okay, here we go.
Inarguable truth number 6. And this is, to me, this is the only inarguable truth that we needed.
Okay.
And we could just drop the mic and walk away.
Okay.
But that wouldn't be a very interesting show.
So, yeah.
So I didn't do that.
Okay.
Inarguable truth number 6. The Patterson Gimlin film has never been duplicated. To me, that's the end-all be-all. If it's so easy to fake this film, if it's so obvious it's a guy in a suit, why hasn't anybody duplicated it? And there's been attempts.
Oh, there has?
Oh, yeah. In fact, the costume company that claimed they made the suit for Patterson, and again, I'm not attacking that company because they were honest when they said they made the suit.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for the Patterson Gimlin film. It was for the other film.
Oh, okay.
But I believe it was Disney reached out to that company because they wanted to try to duplicate the film. Okay. And the skeptics, of course, came out and said, well, Disney doesn't really shoot. They make cartoons. They're not real. But but it's a professional, rich
studio
company.
And
they got a lot of money to
They're
spend.
professional studios.
And they're still.
They don't make only cartoons. You know, they've done movies.
They have, plenty of experience making films.
Of course.
Well, anyway.
And money to get the experts.
And money. That's the thing. They got deep pockets. Disney.
Yes.
Disney reached out to the company that claimed they made the original suit because they were trying to duplicate the Patterson Gimlin film. The company sent them this rubbery, shiny costume with a big gold zipper down the back, and Disney was like, we can't use this. There's no way we can read. And this was, I think, in the early 2000s that this happened. Oh. So if that's the best costume
that they could come up with,
the guy that made the Planet of the Apes, he viewed the I know.
Oh God!
For some reason,
why'd you have to bring up that?
For some reason, the Planet of the Apes creeps Tammy out.
Oh gosh!
But I'm not talking about the movie. Okay. I'm talking about the guy that filmed it. He's the one that designed the makeup for the original Planet of the Apes, and he said, if this is a hoax, that's phenomenal because there's no way. There was a reason that even in that movie, all of the chimpanzees were wearing clothes. Yeah. Because it would have been extremely difficult.
The muscles.
Yeah, to make a full body suit of these things without making them look cheesy. So they put them in armor, wearing helmets and stuff like this.
Well, that makes sense.
Still not taken away from the phenomenal makeup job that they did on those. Yeah. But that's why they did it. And the PGF, no clothes, no helmets, no armor, straight up creature.
Interesting.
In fact, the special effect, he said it can't be a costume. It has to be, custom made. Somebody had to have, in order to get the muscle movement that they were seeing. I think it was that what's that famous guy?
Rick Baker.
Rick Baker. He said he thinks that what they got was like some kind of like long johns or something.
Oh, and just
then pasted real animal fur
on it. Yeah.
And the cost and the time to make it do that without the fur just falling all off of the thing and the adhesive that it would take to make sure it's stuck.
Right.
Because this thing is moving quick. They're way up in the mountains. It's cold. It rains. There was a stream nearby.
Right.
All these other things. Rick Baker was like, it's phenomenal. In fact, I believe he was one of the ones that at first came out and said, it's a fake. But later on, he goes, I don't think it is. And he came out in like a panel recently of like, I think it was on History Channel. And they looked at it and they were like, they don't know how they did
Well,
it.
and they have those makeup costume shows, and they show like where like they're doing like they're putting all the makeup and all the costumes on them.
Oh, yeah, face
And they're
off.
doing like and they're doing like acrobatics and in the water and everything, like in Vegas or something, and you can see this stuff coming off easily.
Yep.
So yeah, and back then, you know what I mean.
They
And that's now.
That's now, and they didn't have latex. Didn't even exist in the 60s.
Oh.
I believe it existed for prophylactics. I think it wasn't really seriously used until like the mid 70s.
Yeah, because you couldn't put that hair on like nylons because it would come off.
It would come off.
It would come off easily.
That's what they're saying. It could not have been a store-bought suit.
Yeah.
Nobody manufactured a suit like that, and that cost would have been astronomical.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because it would have been so time-consuming. You don't realize people that make like the fake like masks and they put all the painstaking human hair in there.
Yeah.
That takes them sometimes weeks to do.
Yeah.
So can you imagine a full body?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing on this creature that's not shown except for the left side of it.
Yeah.
When it turns, you can see the breasts, you can see the stomach, you can see the hips, you can see the buttocks, you can see the back. Like I said, you can see the bottom of the feet. No director, knowing that he had a haphazard suit or maybe a costume that's not up to the best standards, they would have filmed it in the dark. There would have been fog. They would have zoomed the camera in on the creature's eyes and its evil breeding.
Try to get the audience
And just
to look
showed
at
real
different things.
fleeting glimpses of the creature moving through the trees. If they didn't want to show this fake looking, that's not what happened in the Patterson Gimlin film. It is right there, moving in the middle of the frame for everybody to see in all its glory.
Yeah, and there's no way you can CGI that because CGI didn't
even exist. Well, even today, to try to CGI it with that kind of resolution, using that kind of camera, no one's been able to duplicate
you can't.
it.
Yeah, I just thought of that.
Because you would have to lower the resolution down to try to make it look like it's authentic from back in the 60s. And I just,
interesting.
Nobody has been able to duplicate it, baby. And to me, that is clear. That's, to me, the hands down.
Yeah.
That it's authentic. Because if it was a hoax, and if it was so easily done by these two cowboys, good old boys that are out there filming, why hasn't anybody duplicated it? So I think that about covers it. What do you think?
I think so too.
In conclusion, baby, what do you think?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I watched the film and stuff, and it's something. It's some kind of creature.
I want you to watch it again.
Okay.
And keep it in the back of your mind that
my
your
paranoia.
pareidolia.
Oh.
That it's kicking in and it's telling you you're seeing a guy in a suit. Just keep that in the back of your mind when you're watching it.
Okay,
and I
will.
think it'll open your mind a little bit.
Okay.
So you don't know. You're kind of on the fence.
Yeah, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. I mean, here's the thing. It's like the characters of Mr. Gimlin and Mr. Patterson. It's like you said. I don't like to see the bad in people unless they're done something really really bad. And neither man's done anything really really bad that I know of. So I'm just it's interesting, very interesting.
Interesting that you're on the fence on it. I already said what I believe. I believe it's authentic.
Fence.
I believe it is the best evidence in existence today of the existence of Sasquatch. That's what I believe. It can't be fake, baby. It's just there's actually and I invite people to look for this too. There's actually a zoomed in shot of the famous frame as it turns and looks at the camera. The famous frame. As it starts to turn its upper body back toward the left to move forward, it's swinging its right arm forward, and you can actually see the pectoral muscle flexing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know of any costume that can
do that.
That can make muscles flex. Yeah, I don't believe it's a costume. I don't believe it's a fake creature. I believe it's an authentic video of a creature that we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why when you watch it, your brain's telling you, guy in a suit, guy in a suit, guy in a suit, because you,
you're
what else could it be?
pareidolia.
You're pareidolia. So I think that about wraps it up. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Don't forget the emails. We want to hear from you. We want to do a storytime show with your stories. We might do a storytime show here pretty soon with my parents' stories, which is going to be exciting.
That'll be interesting.
But anyway, if you can like us. If you can rate us. Thank you for listening. And
Spread the news of our podcast.
yes.
And that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening, everybody. Good night.